What's going on, guys? I am going to make you guys a quick video just to show you this build. This is going to be super raw footage. I'm just going to run through Blind Burrows. This isn't heavily edited. This is going to be very raw. My name is Naecabon. I'm not a content creator or anything. I'm just making this vid to show off a build because people were asking about it. I'm going to just kind of get right into it and show you the gameplay, and then I'll quickly talk about how it all works afterwards. Just things to watch for while I'm doing this, the basics here. This is a cooldown lucky hit corpse explosion build. You'll notice there's no core skill on here. Lucky hit basically makes it so that corpse explosion has all the damage you're going to need in addition to some of the legendary powers. This current build that I'm wearing right now is spec'd heavily for speed and clearing time. I don't really care about the min-max, how big my crits are. I mostly just care about can I get from point A to point B quickly and do it fast. And as you'll see when you start off already, I call this build Speedball. Like I said, this is going to be really raw because I'm not like editing this or anything, but you'll notice this is a 67 and elites are going to kind of just melt as we go. And I'll talk about the gear, I'll show you guys the skills. I just know everybody wants to see the playstyle first, so I'm just hunting elite packs right now. Obviously I don't really care about anything else. You can see we kind of just, I mean this is obviously a bad example because we have artillery on, hence the problem with unedited footage. But the basics here is when you group everything up with tendrils and you start spamming corpse explosion with Black River, everything pretty much dies. I need boots actually. Poison in this dungeon can be a little annoying. I do keep an eye on that. And I may die to like random stuff. I mean, I'm not super paying attention right now because I'm trying to figure out, trying to think in my head what to show you guys about this. Because again, this is just a raw video because you guys were asking for it. The basics here is when you're in Bloodmist, you're creating corpses. The corpses on big packs are going to be big so that Black River does massive amounts of damage. The reason you want Black River is because normally Bloodmist only eats like one corpse at a time, but when you're in Black River, it's picking up 5, which does the big ticks, and it's making it so that Bloodmist is far more lethal while you're in it for safety purposes. Now, if you watch the cooldowns here, see my Bone Storm cooldown right there? Boom. It just went from full to 0. Like, you can basically just get Bone Storm off cooldown instantly on big packs. It goes really quickly. As you'll see here, if you watch some of the damage ticks, there you go. I just had my ticking damage at over 2 million there, thanks to Black River. The Shadow Blight passive, basically, as that ticks up, once it ticks up 10 times and procs your Blighted aspect, you're going to be doing mega damage. And I'll go over that in a second. Again, I'll go over the inner workings of how all the damage is stacking up, but I'm just trying to show you guys the style for now. It's really fun. It almost feels like a moderation of like a whirlwind barb. Like I'm basically whirlwinding in a way. But the beauty of this is because we don't care about crit nearly as much, you can spec for things like defense and speed and whatever. Crit, I almost died there, but like I said, it's because I'm just playing sloppy. You know, obviously tighten it up a bit and play tighter if you need to. I'm just kind of winging it right now. I'm so tired of grinding these stupid dungeons trying to get boot upgrade all day. I thought for the longest time that boots could roll armor based on the guide. When I realized boots can't actually roll armor and realized how much resources and money I'd wasted trying to get armor on those boots. In addition to how many probably good boots I tossed aside thinking that they were bad because they didn't have armor on them. Also, I farmed, this is pure, if you're wondering why I'm farming 6570s, this is just pure speculation, and I could be pure wrong. I know that there's these GG legendaries in the game that everybody's looking for, and no one's really finding them. Part of me wonders, because of Diablo 2 itemization, and the fact that like different zones, different enemy eye levels had like different drops for different stuff, if like the reason we're not finding these as much is because enough people aren't farming the higher content, so to speak. So part of me just farms the highest stuff that I can efficiently farm because there's this part of me in my soul that says maybe you have a higher chance of Shakos and Doombringers and all this stuff if you're farming the higher endgame content and not doing the lower stuff. But who knows? Again, this is just copium on my part. Oop, that almost killed me. See, there are some affixes that can still kill me. I still have a lot of defenses. Believe me, the game's only been out a week. My gear is nowhere perfect. Like, I still have plenty of ceiling. I'll go over gear in a second and show you now that you've seen that. I'm not going to bother killing this boss right now. Bosses aren't that bad. I'll talk about it. This boss is kind of a cuck because he runs around. This is always annoying, the poison meter trying to TP, right? I just want to show you guys gear real quick. I don't want this video to be too long. You get good runs, you get bad runs. Hopefully that playstyle showed you that it's fast, it clears, it's fun. I enjoy the playstyle. For gearing purposes, this is the Speedball version. I call it Speedball because I use things like Ghostwalker. So basically, to go over it really quick, you've got Explosive Mist, which procs it. This isn't even a perfect roll on Explosive Mist. I have a better roll. I'm just not in love with this helmet. I don't actually really want the Decrepify stacks anymore. I could go over stats, but then this video would take 10 years, so I'll probably just do a more in-depth one later. But basically, I'm not in love with this helm, so I haven't wasted an 0.5 roll on this yet. But you want Explosive Mist and you want Ghostwalker. And again, that Ghostwalker roll isn't even that great, and these boots are fine. I actually want to get rid of the Tendrils. One thing I want you guys to notice is when you have... One thing that they did is I have Bloodmist at base and I have Tendrils. It's getting a plus from that, but otherwise it's at base. You'll notice Tendrils right now is 4.61. If you take these boots off and lose 4 points in Tendrils, it goes up to 5.35. Getting the full points in your boots isn't even a full second of duration on this. There's such high diminishing returns on some of these by lowering the cooldown that I've actually just stopped caring about putting points in them because you can just get better stats than wasting the stats on those. My chest is damn near perfect. This is probably one of the few GG pieces I've rolled. It has a perfect damage close, a perfect shadow, near perfect damage, and it rolled a really high armor. I think Disobedience aspect is probably one of the most overtuned aspects in the game. This is like almost guaranteed to get nerfed sometime in the future. Armor is already more powerful than it needs to be. This just breaks the game. This puts your armor tiers to near damn. When you're running around, it gets to 100% at equal level, which makes no sense to me. Obviously, Hell from Beyond is a must. This thing is great. If they ever introduce the ability to roll on enchanted items, you'd probably want to take the Fear Lucky Hit off because the Fear can fear enemies out of your shadow pools, which is hella fucking annoying. It does have use, though. When you're fighting bosses, since they can't be stunned or feared, you will notice that the lucky hit stacking and the effect of the pools and these gloves will cause stagger bars on the bosses to go up rapidly fast, because every time this lucky hit procs either one of these abilities, it adds stagger to the boss. So you will find that single target, you are a stagger machine. Contrary to belief, it is awesome. Pants are also pretty GG. I just didn't get a perfect roll on the shadow damage, but I'm happy with this. I put Shielding Storm on the pants. Just because Shielding Storm makes you 9 vulnerable when it's up, it's great. Boots, as I said, these boots are fine for now, but I'll probably swap Corpse Tendrils for an all stat and then maybe get rid of the movement speed on Elite, since I do cap on movement speed sometimes if I get a better roll on that on my amulet. Black River is actually a terrible roll. I don't even have a good Black River right now. It's the bottom percent roll. It's only a 797. This is the only Black River I've found. This has huge room for upside. Obviously, the damage I'm doing will get that much better once I get a better Black River. Also, my offhand right now, I have okay. You really want to focus on cooldown and lucky hit. It is also not a high item level. Like I said, guys, I still have a lot of room to grow on this character. It's fun and exciting to know that. 40% for Shadow Blight key passive. I'll go over that in a second. Rings, I use Ultimate Shadow and Bloodmist Trail. For rings, I prioritize lucky hit and vulnerable damage like this. I feel that getting maximum life on rings is very, very good. For those of you that don't know, things like maximum life actually do scale with eye level, so it's one of the stats that you want a higher item level piece if you're going for it. As you can see, this roll here only has 1164 as a max HP because it's a 787 eye level. This is an 819 eye level ring, therefore it can get up to 1310. The reason I like maximum life is I feel that the damage on this spec is already so high that the end game really becomes about survivability. People that worry too much about how much their crits are doing, it doesn't really matter. Doing damage is the easy part. It really just boils down to how much you can survive. In addition to that, other than the vulnerable and the lucky hit on these, the additive slot bucket damage really isn't increasing your total damage by that much of a percent to offset the idea of survivability being a priority stat. And since maximum life is the only defensive stat we can roll on rings, I truly believe the best in slot for this is lucky hit, maximum life, vulnerable, and then whatever slot bucket roll you get or want. Damage to crowd controlled is good. Damage to slowed is good since they're decrepified all the time. Damage to close is strong because we're kind of a melee build. Damage to shadow is fine. All of these things are fine. And for amulet, this is a pretty good GG amulet for speed clears. It actually rolled the nuts. +3 corpse, +3 fuel by death with movement speed and cooldown. It didn't roll a perfect movement speed, but still, I mean, I fucking love this amulet, obviously. The resistance is a little low because not a high eye level, but that's fine because the resistances are kind of below anyway. I'm not too worried about it. Some of the interactions with these, for example, you might underestimate the Shadow Blight key passive damage. This is the damage that procs every time you deal 10 ticks of damage with them. The baseline doesn't seem like much at 299.99 to 3600. Doesn't seem like much. However, when you proc get this to ×3 damage, and you have Blighted going, and you start critting with this thing, it can get a little nutty. It's a little out of control. I've seen them hit for 100k, and I know 100k isn't a lot in the grand scheme of things. Obviously, people are doing billions and millions and whatever, but it's free damage. It's happening on the side, And the beauty of the build is you're trying to proc this as much as possible, because every time you proc 10 Shadow Blights, you're procking your Blighted. And when you're in Blighted, that's when you do the big boy God mode numbers. You're doing 180% increased multiplicative damage to all of your stuff. So the goal is, how many times can you proc this? How fast can you do it? And that's why you use things like Bloodmist. Leaves a trail that lasts for 4 seconds and deals shadow damage. You also have Ultimate Shadow, which turns your Bone Storm into shadow damage. So at the end of the day, you're doing Bone Storm ticking damage, you're doing Bloodmist ticking damage, and you're also doing your Shadow Pulse ticking damage. And between all of those sources of ticking damage, you are proccing Shadow Blight regularly. All the friggin' time, this is going off and popping and making the exploding noise, increasing your damage, and you're pretty much going to be going in and out of Shadow Blight, Bladed aspect all the time. Black River is insane for speed farming. It's not as great on bosses. I have a Black Up wand that I switched to. This is the one I'm currently using. It's pretty powerful, not a bad roll. 812 is fine, has all stats int, shadow damage affected, and vulnerable. This is really, really good. You really, really like the lucky hit chance. When you have this on right now, my lucky hit chance is up to 61% on Corpse Explosion. It's very powerful. You can also get lucky hit while barriered on your helmet and on your focus. You can create a Sorceress ult and roll these. Only Sorceress can roll it. My items currently do not have it, but that's mostly... Well, this one tried. I tried getting it on this one. Unfortunately, I just got the crit strike instead. I think the GG offhand is cooldown lucky hit while barriered, and shadow damage reduction. I think the damage reduction from enemies that are affected by shadow is really strong. It's one of the reasons I think shadow is one of the best builds for Necro. When you're stacking defenses, it's really powerful. Really, you're just trying to get your armor as high as possible. You're trying to get, damage, armor, damage reduction by shadow. You want that on as many pieces as possible. And then from that point on, it's kind of just juicing your life and getting those little edges where you can in survivability. For Lilith pushing and high content, I actually swap out Ghost and I swap out some of these other aspects. I've actually have the plan is to move Bloodmist to the boots. For the helmet, you use the Might aspect, which gives you the 20% every time you use Reap. That way, instead of Reap give... Oh, and by the way, you don't use Blight. You don't need it in this build. And the reason you use Reap is because sometimes you just want that free corpse. If you find yourself in your rotation in a sticky situation where Bloodmist is on cooldown for a few seconds, you can't Bone Storm, and you just want the free corpse to get the rotation, being able to Reap into Tendrils and then pop out an explosion is very strong. And it also gives you the 15% damage reduction, which turns into a 35% damage reduction, multiplicative, of course, when you're using Might on your helmet. It is a nice little added boost. I think it's very strong. I call it the poor man Shaco. So that is very good there. Also, you don't necessarily need Blood-Soaked Band for high pushing. Yes, you lose the Shadow. You're in Bloodmist a lot. The tick up is great. All that stuff is strong, but you don't necessarily need it. There are other options you could use. I don't know. All I'm saying is for high pushing, like 90 plus, you kind of play the game a little differently than what you just saw. You're not as concerned about running through the dungeon, killing the elites as fast as possible. You have as much time to do what you want. And here's a little pro tip when you're trying to do high pushing. Remember, guys, it's not timed. You can literally take your boots off when you have Explosive Mist on your boots, and you can literally just sit there doing circles with Blood Mist, creating corpses, to build piles of 10 to 15 corpses, so that when you pull the next pull, you literally just pull them to your pile of corpses and you're good to go. So keep things like that in mind. I see a lot of people try to rush high tier pushing as if they're trying to do a speed clear. It doesn't really make sense. I think using the Blood Mist to make corpses for pulls is really effective, and it's just something that you can keep in mind. But yeah, so switching to this for single target, for the lucky hit chance. Lucky hit is really, really powerful. The real crux of the build, I didn't really talk about abilities. The real crux of the build is Hued Flesh creates corpses on lucky hit doubled against bosses. This is basically how the build survives. Your corpse pools are creating corpses themselves. They're recreating corpses. It triggers over 50% of the time when you're, depending on your lucky hit chance. This can get much higher if you get the mage skills rolled on it. So this is generating an absolutely bonkers amount of corpses, which allows this to explode and create the pool to create more corpses. I currently have 7 fueled by death because of my amulet and Black River. You obviously can build this up. If you want to put more points in this for an even slighter cooldown, sure. I mean, you can. I get it off cooldown so regularly, it just seems like wasted skill points to me. I have the Curse passive. You obviously... Decrepify is fine. Again, diminishing returns. 4 points in this, taking you from a 20 to a 24% damage reduction, is not nearly as significant as if this was to have, say, armor percent, or enough of a damage boost as if this had, say, intellect. Like, there's other things you can roll on this that, to me, just seem better than the increased amplify. It just doesn't, or the decrepify, it doesn't really seem mandatory to me. I have bonuses in these. I only have 1 point in this. This is very interesting. I know it says it has a 15% chance to stun, but in testing and in play, I find that this doesn't proc very often for me on enemies. I feel like this, everything has, it's because it says has up to a 15%, every lucky hit effect in the game is weird, and that just because it says it's 15%, it doesn't always mean it is 15%. When you read the tooltips and talk about lucky hit, it's very strange. They talk about how different skills and different effects have different coefficients based on the skill and all this other stuff. I don't know. All I'm saying is I don't proc this very often. The only reason I keep 1 point in it is because when it procs on bosses, it builds stagger bar, and it doesn't matter if it's 1 second or 3 seconds, it's the effect of them blocking the stun that builds it. So just having the 1 point in it for the bosses is fine. Otherwise, I don't give a shit. I have 2 points in this right now. I'll probably find a way to put this up to 3. I'm not in love with Fortify. I think this mechanic kind of sucks, but I feel like it's really weak because it's based on base life and not maximum life. It takes 10 years to build your Fortify up. I don't really like it, but it's just free DR in the background that's ticking away while you're in your Bloodmist, so you might as well have it. Obviously, you're not using your pets, so these get juiced. You have this for the critical strike, whatever. And yeah, I have the close one. If I free up more points in the future, again, I would probably put 3 points in this as well. I don't have this right now because survivability is my battle, not so much defense. Uh, damage, I mean, sorry. I prefer this over this. This is better for bosses, but enemies are cursed more frequently, and since I'm up close to them often, this actually sees less use. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Now for Paragon, this is a hot mess. If you want to freeze this and take a screenshot to help you, you could. Basically, I have 4 trees that maximize a lot of the DR available in it. I take the starting tree, obviously. Then you've got the Wither board. You've got the blood flesh eater board. This is probably one of the single most powerful legendary tiles in the game because it gives a 40% true multiplier. This thing is insane. And also, fun fact, when you eat 5 corpses with Blood River, it automatically procs this every time, which is awesome. And you've got Scent of Death. This is basically DR since you have corpses around you more often than not, so it's kind of neat. And if you don't, sure, you get some free damage, whatever. But in the name of the game being DR, this is great. I added this tree on last minute because I realized it has so many random nodes that I liked. And also, crit damage, like I said, it's sneaky. You don't gear for crit. You don't care about min-maxing crit. But getting a little bit of crit in your build just for those occasional Shadow Blights, it's not that bad. And I'm probably, right now I have conceded on this. I am probably going to roll this to the Tendrils aspect for the 20% Tendrils damage with 60% crit damage. Purely because, while this is boosting the Shadow Dots and the other one isn't, there is enough other sources of damage. And the crit damage, 20% crit and 60% crit damage, is just a lot of stat gain for a single aspect. It just seems good. And I'm going to try it out and see if it's better than the barrier damage. We'll see. Against single target fights, you're going to find those Shadow Blight procs are a big part of your damage as you're fighting the bosses. It really does help. But again, you could use Conceited for now. You could use Edge Masters too, since we don't really use Main Essence much. I just have been using this, and I'll try the Tendrils thing out. But Black River is obviously the pumper. If you can get a good roll on this, God bless you. Mine sucks. But yeah, I think that pretty much covers everything. I use, obviously, Control, Shadow, the Shadow and Scourge, Vulnerable, and those are pretty obvious choices. I think they make sense. The 2 Shadow ones. Damage to crowd controlled and vulnerable damage. I mean, these are just obvious picks. You could so there's arguments to be made. This one only affecting the shadow damage over time is actually interesting. I think it's still the obvious pick because obviously our shadow damage is so high. But you could mess with other stuff too, like Territorial or Undaunted or Imbiber, for the pure idea of the other damage, like Shadow Burn procs and Bone Storm proc, all this other stuff. They are dealing damage, so you could increase those if you wanted to. I just think that this is the best one, and it's not close. So, yeah, that's pretty much it. You can go back and watch that quick run if you want for an idea on gameplay. This video already went on way longer than I thought it would. I just wanted to give the basics of the build. I'm currently pushing 90 pluses. I'll try to probably find a good key roll on 100 and try to clear it out once I can get a couple more upgrades, mostly looking for my lucky hit while barriered and armor on the helmet. And I'm just looking for better boots and maybe a slightly higher eye level ring. This doesn't have vulnerable damage, so even though it's high eye level for the health, I do suffer that this doesn't have vulnerable damage, so I'll probably swap this. And a better offhand would be nice because the 797 is kind of low, doesn't have the lucky hit while barriered, and I really, really, really want to get the shadow damage reduction on this item would be insane. This is a near perfect item. It's really heartbreaking that it didn't roll a higher shadow damage over time reduction. But yeah, with a little bit of that, get the armor a little higher, get some more reductions, add might to the build, swap out of the speed build. Lilith's going to die, and I'm going to go for the Nightmare 100. So that's it. Hope this gives you guys enough information to get started. Have fun with the build. It's extremely powerful. Almost a guarantee Blizzard's going to find a way to nerf it because Blizzard hates fun. But until then, enjoy. Have fun, guys.